a lot of the respondents. One of the questions here is from Wynne from Helidon. She says, why are flying foxes going to be culled as they were in the 1970s and 80s? Culling kept the numbers under control and there were never any illnesses in livestock or humans back then. So why aren't we culling flying foxes?
Perhaps, Sharon, I can take that one. The issue of culling is not the solution. The fact that in the past the animals are not actually protected, they are now protected at law. As you probably know, there's 4 species of flying foxes in Australia. The spectacled flying fox, a fairly restricted range animal in North Queensland. Little red flying fox is a very vast range across pretty well the top end of Australia and right the way through to Victoria. Black flying foxes, again, a similar range to the little reds, and the grey-headed flying foxes. Now, over the passage of time, these animals have become protected at law, so culling them is effectively prohibited. The practicalities of actually culling animals to protect from Hendra is really not a practical solution. I have here a map which, if I can just hold up for people to see. This map, make sure I've got it the right way around though, Australia's upside down. This, for those that can see it, shows the distribution of the various species of flying foxes. So in assuming that you could cull a species across its range, this in itself would pose significant issues. Secondly, the issue associated with the humane destruction and the cruelty aspects of that. Thirdly, who's going to be sort of picking up the impacted animals? Fourthly, how would you actually go about it? And fifthly, and most importantly, I think, is we're missing the point about the benefits these animals provide to the ecosystems in Australia. If you were to remove these animals from the system in Australia, there would be a major ecological impact into the flowering plants in Australia. And it's very difficult to put an equation to that, but it would be worth millions upon millions of dollars, let alone well-being and lifestyle and so on. So that the culling question is really one that's easy to put out there, less easy to accommodate.
What about then the issue of dispersal? There's a question here from Julie at Gloucester. She works in the veterinary industry and is often asked by clients why they're not culling them. She's also worried though that by scaring them away, that would stress them more and they would shed the virus more. Is that the case? Is that why dispersal isn't such a great form of or solution?
Sharon, the dispersal obviously is provided for, even though, as I mentioned, the animals are protected. The legislation provides for the ability to disperse flying foxes and destroy and affect roost sites for flying foxes. In each case, they're taken on their merits, so we have to weigh up the balance between the impact of the animal and the inherent risks. The knowledge that we now have of this particular virus obviously weighs heavily on decision makers when they're making decisions to grant permits or condition permits for dispersal. Hume and I have been working on particular colonies where we've initiated dispersal activities, and notably in Gayndah and in Barcaldine. And in both cases, it is a taxing issue for a delegate to have on their mind about the relative risk associated with flying foxes that we do know, as Hume's alluded to. They carry this Hendra around. They've had it ever since flying foxes and Hendra have been together, many thousands of years. The question in terms of the ambient condition is what triggers this. So we do know perhaps that in an undisturbed state we know Hendra exists. In an undisturbed state we know Hendra and flying foxes coexist. In a disturbed state we can probably presume there's going to be an increased level of stress associated with that disturbance, and we can also speculate perhaps that level of stress will increase both, as it does with all of us. If we're not stressed, we're relatively calm. If you're stressed, you get a bit head up. In flying foxes, that could manifest itself in behaviours and also perhaps in an escalation of that. And I defer to Hume in terms of that data around that. From a dispersal point of view, though, we don't resolve from the fact that we do have that tool in our kit bag to look at dispersal of flying foxes, but we have to weigh up all the pros and cons of that before we make the decision.